3 experienced firefighters vanish without a trace during a routine wildfire suppression mission. 11 years later, a spelunker's headlamp illuminates their helmets deep inside a glacial cave helmets that should have burned to ash long ago. The crackling radio transmission cuts through the morning silence at Station 19, jolting Captain Maria Santos from her coffee. Dispatch to Engine 47, we have a code red Wildfire, coordinates 41.2431 north, 121.5047 west. Wind speeds gusting to 45 miles per hour. Immediate response required. Santos checks her watch. 6:47 a.m., August 15, 2013. She's been fighting fires for 18 years, long enough to recognize the tension in the dispatcher's voice. This isn't routine. Copy that, dispatch. Engine 47 en route. Lieutenant Jake Morrison's voice crackles back through the radio, steady and professional as always. Santos knows Morrison well. They trained together at the academy, worked the same devastating season in 2009 when the Rim Fire nearly consumed half of Yosemite. If Morrison sounds calm, that's because he chooses to. The man's seen enough flames to know when to worry. Santos pulls up the incident map on her computer screen. The Cascade Range, Mount Shasta region. Remote terrain, thick with old growth. Pine and Douglas fir. The kind of wilderness where a fire can spread faster than a crew can retreat. Where radio signals bounce off canyon walls and GPS coordinates become lifelines. Engine 47 carries 3 of her best. Morrison as crew leader, Tommy Chun as the equipment specialist, and Sarah Walsh, the rookie with 5 years of experience who still insists everyone call her Rookie because she remembers what it felt like to earn respect one call at a time. Santos recruited Walsh personally after watching her carry a 90-pound pack-up, a 60-degree slope during a training exercise, never breaking stride, never complaining. Engine 47, what's your ETA? Santos. Radios, 43 minutes out, Morrison responds. Roads are clear, weather's holding. Santos nods to herself, then frowns. Weather's holding for now. But the meteorological reports show a pressure system moving in from the Pacific, bringing unpredictable wind patterns. She's seen fires change direction in minutes when the winds shift, turning heroes into victims before anyone can react. At 7:31 a.m., Morrison's voice comes through again. Station 19, we've reached the perimeter. Visibility's decent, winds are manageable. Beginning initial assessment. Santos plots their position on her map. They're at the fire's northeastern edge, where the flames have been crawling uphill through dense underbrush. Standard protocol calls for them to establish a fire break, cutting a line through the vegetation to starve the fire of fuel. It's dangerous work, but Morrison's crew has done it dozens of times. Copy that, Engine 47. Weather Service is tracking the front moving. In. Keep an eye on wind direction. Roger. Chun's setting up the hose line now. Walsh is prepping the chainsaw for debris clearing. Santos can picture the scene. Morrison coordinating from the truck, Chen unrolling hundreds of feet of hose with practiced efficiency. Walsh checking the chainsaw's fuel mixture and testing the starter cord. 3 professionals working in perfect synchronization, the way they've trained for years. At 8:15 a.m., the routine updates stop. Santos waits. 5 minutes pass. 10. She tries raising them on the radio. Engine 47, this is Station 19. Report. Your status, silence. Engine 47, please respond. Static fills the channel, broken only by the distant chatter of other crews working different sectors of the fire. Santos feels her chest tighten. Equipment malfunctions happen, but Morrison would have switched to backup communications immediately. He's obsessive about maintaining contact. She tries their cell phones. Morrison's goes straight to voicemail. Chun's does the same. Walsh's phone rings twice. then cuts to a busy signal that makes no sense in an area with minimal cell coverage. By 8:45 a.m., Santos has dispatched Engine 52 to their last known coordinates. By 9:20 a.m., Engine 52 arrives at the scene and radios. Back with words that will haunt Santos for the next 11 years. Station 19. We found Engine 47. Vehicle is intact, no signs of damage. All equipment is accounted for. But Morrison, Chun, and Walsh are gone. There's no indication of where they went or why they left the truck. Santos grabs her radio so hard her knuckles go white. Define gone, Engine 52. Personal gear is still here. Water bottles, energy bars, Morrison's clipboard with his incident notes. Even their backup radio is sitting on the dashboard. It's like they just stepped away from the truck and vanished. The fire continues to burn for 6 more days. Search and rescue teams comb through 47 square miles of wilderness. Helicopters equipped with thermal imaging fly grid patterns over the forest canopy. Volunteer. Searchers beat through underbrush so thick they can barely see 5 feet ahead. They find nothing. No footprints leading away from Engine 47. No torn clothing caught on branches. No signs of struggle or equipment failure. No bodies, no bones. No trace that 3 experienced firefighters ever existed beyond that truck sitting empty in the forest. The official investigation concludes after 8 months. The final report lists Morrison, Chen, and Walsh as missing, presumed deceased due to wildfire incident. Their families receive death benefits. Their photos join the memorial wall at Station 19. The case file gets stored in a basement archive, stamped with a date and filed under unresolved. Santos retires 2 years later, but she never stops wondering what happened in those missing 43 minutes between Morrison's last radio check and Engine 52's arrival. She keeps copies of all the incident reports in a box under her bed, reading through them on sleepless nights, searching for some detail everyone missed. 11 years pass. On October 3, 2024, a message appears in Santos's email inbox that makes her hands shake as she reads it. The sender is Dr. Alina Vasquez, a glaciologist from UC Davis. The subject line reads, Missing Firefighters Urgent Discovery. Santos opens the message and sees 3 photographs that stop her heart. The photographs show 3 firefighter helmets, perfectly preserved, sitting on a shelf of blue-white ice deep inside what appears to be a cave. Each helmet bears the distinctive yellow and red stripes of the California Department of Forestry. Even through the grainy digital images, Santos can make out the numbers stenciled on the front: 47A, 47B, 47C. Morrison, Chun, and Walsh, Santos's. Coffee mug slips from her fingers, shattering against her kitchen floor. Coffee spreads across the tiles like a dark stain, but she doesn't notice. She's staring at the computer screen, her mind racing through impossible calculations. The helmets look pristine. No scorch marks, no melting, no heat damage. They sit on that ice shelf as if someone carefully placed them there yesterday, not 11 years ago in the middle of a raging wildfire. She scrolls down to read Dr. Vasquez's message. Captain Santos, I hope this email finds you well. I obtained your contact information through the California Fire Investigation Unit after discovering what I believe may be evidence related to the 2013 disappearance of 3 firefighters from your station. I'm part of a research team studying glacial cave systems in the Cascade Range. Yesterday, while documenting ice formations in an unmapped cave system approximately 12 miles northeast of where Engine 47 was found, my team discovered these helmets. The cave is accessible only through a vertical entrance that requires technical climbing equipment. The helmets were positioned on a natural ice shelf roughly 200 feet below the surface. I've contacted local authorities, but given the age of the case and the unusual circumstances, they suggested I reach out to you directly. I understand you were the supervising captain during the incident. Would you be available for a phone conversation? I have additional information that I believe you should hear before we proceed with formal evidence collection. Santos reads the message 3 times before her hand stops shaking enough to dial the number Dr. Vasquez provided. Dr. Vasquez? This is Maria Santos. I got your email. Captain Santos, thank you for calling so quickly. The voice on the other end is crisp, professional, but Santos detects an undercurrent of excitement. I know this must be shocking news. How is this possible? Santos asks. Those helmets should have been destroyed in the fire, and 12 miles from where we found the truck? How did they get into a cave? That's what makes this discovery so remarkable, Dr. Vasquez says. The cave system where we found the helmets is part of a lava tube network that formed thousands of years ago. Most of these tubes are sealed or collapsed, but this particular cave has remained intact. The ice formations inside are fed by underground springs that freeze year-round due to the elevation and the cave's unique microclimate. Santos grabs a pen and starts taking notes. But 12 miles, that's a significant distance. Yes, and here's what's truly puzzling. The cave entrance is completely hidden. We only found it because we're using ground-penetrating radar to map subsurface ice formations. From the surface, there's no indication that the cave exists. It's concealed by a rock formation that appears solid unless you know exactly where to look. Santos feels a chill that has nothing to do with talk of ice caves. Dr. Vasquez, in your professional opinion, how did those helmets get there? There's a long pause. That's the question that's been keeping me awake since yesterday. The helmets weren't dropped or thrown into the cave. They were placed deliberately on that ice shelf. Someone had to rappel down with technical equipment, position them carefully, and climb back out. Someone who knew the cave existed. Exactly. And Captain Santos, there's something else. Something I didn't want to put in an email. Santos grips the phone tighter. What? The helmets aren't the only things we found. The line goes quiet except for the sound of Santos's heart pounding in her ears. She waits, knowing that whatever Dr. Vasquez says next will change. Everything. We found personal items. A waterproof bag containing what appears to be firefighting gear. Gloves, tools, a radio that looks like it belongs to your department. And ... Dr. Vasquez's voice drops to almost a whisper. We found a message. What kind of message? It's carved into the ice wall near where the helmets were placed. Someone used a sharp instrument to etch words directly into the ice. The message is crude but legible. Santos closes her eyes. What does it say? 3 words, we are here. The room seems to tilt around Santos. She steadies herself against the kitchen counter, her mind struggling to process what she's hearing. Are you suggesting that Morrison, Chun, and Walsh are alive? I don't know what I'm suggesting, Dr. Vasquez admits. I'm a scientist, Captain. I deal in observable facts. But the facts in this case don't make conventional sense. Those helmets are in pristine condition after 11 years. They're positioned in a location that requires specialized knowledge and equipment to access. And someone carved a message into ice that's been forming in that cave for decades. Santos thinks about Morrison's methodical nature, his obsession with safety protocols. She remembers Chun's mechanical aptitude, how he could fix any piece of equipment with tools improvised from whatever was available. She recalls Walsh's determination, the way she never gave up even when situations seemed hopeless. If anyone could survive the impossible, it would be those 3. Dr. Vasquez, I need to see this cave. I was hoping you'd say that, but I have to warn you, it's not an easy descent. The cave entrance is a vertical drop that requires mountaineering skills. Are you comfortable with technical rope work? Santos almost laughs. She's been rock climbing since she was 16, long before she became a firefighter. Some of her most challenging rescues involved rappelling down cliff faces to reach stranded hikers. I can handle the technical aspects. When can we go? Tomorrow morning, if the weather holds. But Captain Santos, I should mention, we're not the only ones interested in this discovery. I've had several calls today from people asking about the cave system. Reporters mostly, but also someone claiming to represent a private investigation firm. Santos frowns. How did word get out so quickly? I'm not sure. I've only contacted you and the local sheriff's department. But somehow people know. I'm concerned that if we don't document the site soon, evidence might be disturbed or removed. Then we go tomorrow, Santos says. First light. As she hangs up the phone, Santos stares at the photographs on her computer screen. 3 helmets that should have burned, sitting on ice that shouldn't exist, in a cave that can't be found without specialized equipment. Either someone is playing an elaborate and cruel hoax on the families of 3 missing firefighters, or Jake Morrison, Tommy Chun, and Sarah Walsh have been trying to send a message from somewhere impossible. Santos reaches for her phone to call Morrison's widow, then stops. What would she say? That her husband's helmet turned up in an ice cave with a message carved in the wall. That after 11 years of grief and acceptance, there might be a reason to hope again? Instead, she opens her laptop and starts researching everything she can find about glacial cave systems, underground ice formations, and survival in extreme conditions. If her crew is somehow still alive, she's going to find them. But as she types search terms into her browser, a darker thought creeps into her mind. If Morrison, Chun, and Walsh didn't put those helmets in the cave themselves, then someone else did. Someone who wanted those helmets found after 11 years. Someone who knows exactly what happened on August 15, 2013. Santos arrives at the trailhead before dawn, her gear bag loaded with rope, harnesses, and headlamps. The morning air is sharp with the scent of pine and the promise of snow. Dr. Vasquez's pickup truck is already there, along with 2 other vehicles she doesn't recognize. As Santos approaches, she sees Dr. Vasquez emerging from her truck, followed by a tall man in his 50s wearing expensive hiking gear that looks like it's never seen actual wilderness. Behind him, a younger woman with short-cropped hair and tactical clothing adjusts a professional-grade camera. Captain Santos, Dr. Vasquez calls out. I'm glad you made it. This is Detective Ray Hutchins from the private investigation firm I mentioned, and Sarah Kim, a documentary filmmaker. Santos shakes hands with both, but her eyes narrow as she studies Hutchins. Something about his demeanor feels off, too eager, too rehearsed. Detective Hutchins, what's your interest in this case? Hutchins flashes a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. I represent a client who prefers to remain anonymous. Someone with a significant interest in bringing closure to the families of the missing firefighters. After 11 years? Santos's voice carries a skeptical edge. That's quite a delayed reaction. Sometimes it takes time for new information to surface, Hutchins replies smoothly. My client has resources that could be valuable in solving this mystery. Sarah Kim steps forward, camera in hand. Captain Santos, I've been documenting cold cases involving missing persons in wilderness areas. This discovery could be part of a larger pattern that, no cameras, Santos interrupts. Not until we know what we're dealing with. Kim's expression tightens, but she lowers the camera. I understand your caution, but public attention can sometimes generate tips that help solve cases. Dr. Vasquez checks her GPS unit. The cave entrance is a 2-mile hike up a steep trail. I should warn everyone, the conditions inside are challenging. Temperature hovers around 32 degrees, the air is thin, and the ice formations can be unstable. As they begin the hike, Santos falls into step beside Dr. Vasquez, letting Hutchins and Kim follow behind. The trail winds upward through dense forest, broken occasionally by clearings that offer glimpses of distant peaks. Elena, Santos says quietly, using the glaciologist's first name. How did these other people find out about the discovery so quickly? Dr. Vasquez glances back at their companions, then leans closer to Santos. That's what worries me. I filed a preliminary report with the university yesterday morning. Standard procedure for significant discoveries. But by afternoon, my phone was ringing constantly. Someone leaked information fast. Or someone was already watching. Watching for what? Santos adjusts her pack straps, thinking about the pristine condition of those helmets. I've been wondering why now. Why did these helmets suddenly appear after 11 years? Either they've been in that cave the whole time, and we just happened to find them, or someone placed them there recently. You think this might be staged? I think 3 experienced firefighters don't just vanish into thin air. And I think helmets don't survive forest fires and end up in hidden ice caves by accident. The trail steepens, and conversation becomes more difficult as they climb. Santos notices that Hutchins, despite his expensive gear, is struggling with the altitude. His breathing becomes labored, and sweat beads on his forehead, despite the cool morning air. Kim, on the other hand, moves with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to challenging terrain. After 90 minutes of steady climbing, Dr. Vasquez calls a halt near a cluster of granite boulders. The cave entrance is just ahead, but I need to brief everyone on safety protocols. She pulls out a detailed map and spreads it across a flat rock. The entrance is a vertical shaft, approximately 15 feet in diameter. The initial drop is about 40 feet to a ledge system, then another 160 feet down to the main cave floor. The walls are a mixture of basalt and ice, which can be slippery. Santos studies the map, noting the complex network of passages branching off from the main chamber. Elena, how extensive is this cave system? We've only mapped about 30% of it. Some passages extend for miles, connecting to other lava tube networks. It's possible to get lost down there, which is why I insist everyone stays together. Hutchins wipes sweat from his face. Is it necessary for all of us to descend? Perhaps I could coordinate from the surface, provide communication support, ... If you're not comfortable with the technical climbing, you should stay up here. Santos agrees. She doesn't trust Hutchins, but she'd rather have him where she can't see him than worry about his competence on rope. Kim adjusts her gear. I'm going down. This documentation is too important to skip. Dr. Vasquez leads them around the boulder cluster to what appears to be solid rock face. But as they approach, Santos sees the carefully concealed opening, a narrow crack between 2 massive stones that widens into a circular shaft descending into darkness. Jesus, Santos breathes, peering into the hole. Her headlamp beam disappears into black nothing. You found this with ground-penetrating radar. Pure luck, actually. We were mapping ice formations in the area when our equipment detected a void space. It took 3 days of careful excavation to open the entrance enough for human access. Dr. Vasquez begins setting up the rappelling system, threading climbing rope through a series of anchors she's previously installed in the rock. The setup is professional grade, designed to handle multiple people and heavy loads. As Santos checks her harness and tests her rappel device, she notices Kim watching her with unusual intensity. Something wrong? Santos asks. Just wondering what you expect to find down there, Kim replies. After 11 years, what are the odds that your missing firefighters are still alive? Santos pauses in her equipment check. It's a fair question, but something about Kim's tone suggests she already knows the answer. I expect to find the truth, whatever that turns out to be. Dr. Vasquez clips into the rope system. I'll go first, then Captain Santos. Sarah, you follow third. The ledge system at the first level is stable, but be careful not to put too much weight on the ice formations. As Dr. Vasquez disappears over the edge, her headlamp creating a circle of light that shrinks rapidly into the depths, Santos feels a familiar mix of anticipation and dread. In 18 years of firefighting, she's rappelled into burning buildings, descended cliff faces to reach crash victims, and explored collapsed structures looking for survivors. But this feels different. This feels like descending into a grave. Santos clips in and steps backward over the edge, trusting her weight to the rope. The walls of the shaft are smooth basalt, carved by ancient lava flows and polished by centuries of flowing water. As she descends, the temperature drops noticeably, and her breath begins to form visible clouds. At 40 feet, she reaches the first ledge where Dr. Vasquez waits. The ledge is roughly 10 feet wide, covered with a thin layer of ice that sparkles in their headlamp beams. From here, the shaft continues downward, but Santos can also see the mouths of several horizontal passages leading into the surrounding rock. "How many ways in and out of here?" Santos asks. "From this level? At least 6 passages that we know of. Some lead to dead ends, others connect to larger chamber systems. It's like a maze down here." Kim arrives on the ledge, moving with practiced efficiency. As she unclips from the rope, Santos notices something that makes her pulse quicken. Kim's climbing harness shows significant wear, the kind that comes from extensive use. The gear of someone who spends serious time on technical terrain. "You've done a lot of caving," Santos observes. Kim adjusts her headlamp. "Some, mostly for documentary work." But Santos catches the hesitation in her voice, the way Kim's eyes don't quite meet hers. Whatever Kim's real background, it involves more than documentary filmmaking. Dr. Vasquez sets up for the final descent. The main chamber is directly below us. That's where we found the helmets. As Santos prepares to continue down, she looks up at the circle of daylight far above. Hutchins's silhouette is visible at the entrance, but something about his posture suggests he's not just waiting, he's watching. Or maybe he's watching for someone else. Santos shakes off the paranoid thought and focuses on the descent. 40 feet down, then 60, then 100. The walls close in, then open up as she drops into a vast chamber that her headlamp can't fully illuminate. When her feet finally touch solid ground, Santos looks around in wonder. The cave chamber is enormous, easily the size of a cathedral. Ice formations hang from the ceiling like frozen waterfalls, and the floor is covered with smooth ice that reflects their lights like a mirror. And there, on a natural shelf of blue ice 20 feet away, sit 3 firefighter helmets. Even from a distance, Santos can see the numbers clearly: 47A, 47B, 47C. But as she takes a step toward them, her foot strikes something half buried in the ice. She looks down and sees the edge of what appears to be a piece of fabric. Red fabric, like the kind used in firefighter uniforms. Santos kneels beside the fabric, her breath forming clouds in the frigid air. The material is partially embedded in a thin layer of ice that has formed over what appears to be a much older surface. Using her knife, she carefully chips away the ice, revealing more of the red fabric. It's a sleeve. A firefighter's jacket sleeve with reflective striping still intact. "Elena," Santos calls softly, "bring your camera over here." Dr. Vasquez hurries over, pulling out a waterproof digital camera. "What did you find?" "Part of a jacket. But look at this." Santos points to the ice formation surrounding the fabric. "This isn't recent ice. See how it's formed in layers? This has been here for years." Kim appears beside them, her headlamp casting sharp shadows across the ice. "How can you tell the age of ice formation?" Dr. Vasquez examines the layers closely. "Maria's right. See these distinct bands? Each layer represents a different freeze cycle. Based on the thickness and clarity, I'd estimate this ice has been forming for at least 8 to 10 years. Santos feels her heart rate increase. If the fabric has been here that long, it could actually belong to one of her missing firefighters. But that raises more questions than it answers. "Elena, is there any way someone could survive down here, even temporarily?" The temperature is constant at 32 degrees. With proper clothing and shelter, hypothetically someone could survive for days, maybe weeks if they had food and water. But this cave system extends for miles. If someone was injured or disoriented, Santos stands and walks toward the shelf, containing the helmets, her footsteps echoing in the vast chamber. As she approaches, more details become visible. The helmets are positioned with deliberate care, facing outward as if on display. Between them sits the waterproof bag Dr. Vasquez mentioned, along with what appears to be a handheld radio. But it's the carved message in the ice wall behind the helmets that makes Santos's blood run cold. The words, "We are here," are etched deeply into the ice, the letters crude but unmistakably intentional. Below the message, someone has carved 3 sets of initials: JMTC, SW Jake Morrison, Tommy Chun, Sarah Walsh. "They were here," Santos whispers. "They actually made it to this cave." Kim raises her camera. "Captain, I need to document this before we disturb anything." "I said no cameras until—" "This is evidence now," Kim interrupts, her tone suddenly authoritative. "If you're firefighters, we're here, we need to preserve the scene exactly as we found it." Something in Kim's voice makes Santos turn to look at her more carefully. The woman's demeanor has shifted, becoming more professional, more official. "Kim, who exactly do you work for?" Before Kim can answer, Dr. Vasquez calls out from across the chamber. "Captain Santos, you need to see this." Santos hurries over to where the glaciologist is examining a section of the cave wall about 50 feet from the helmet display. Her headlamp illuminates what appears to be another message carved into the ice, but this one is different. The lettering is more precise, clearly done with better tools. "Followed US down. Trust nitrogen monoxide 1 above." Below that message, someone has carved an arrow pointing deeper into the cave system. Santos stares at the words, her mind racing. "Followed. Them down? Who followed them?" "Captain," Kim says from behind her, "I think there's something you should know about why I'm really here." Santos turns, noting that Kim has positioned herself between Santos and Dr. Vasquez and the main exit route. "I'm listening." "My name is Sarah Kim, but I don't work for a documentary company. I'm a federal investigator with the National Park Service's Special Investigations Unit. We've been tracking unusual disappearances in wilderness areas for the past 5 years. Dr. Vasquez looks confused. "Why didn't you identify yourself properly?" "Because this case intersects with an ongoing investigation into a network of people who use remote wilderness areas for illegal activities. The disappearance of your firefighters may not have been accidental." Santos feels the temperature in the cave drop even further, though she knows it's her own body responding to stress. "What kind of illegal activities?" "Human trafficking. Drug smuggling. There are groups that use knowledge of hidden cave systems and remote terrain to move people and contraband without detection. We've been tracking increased activity in this region since 2010. 3 years before my people disappeared." "Exactly, and Captain, there's something else. Detective Hutchins isn't who he claims to be either." Santos looks up toward the cave entrance, though from this depth she can't see the opening. "Then who is he?" "We're not entirely sure. But yesterday, after Dr. Vasquez's discovery went public, our monitoring systems detected unusual communication traffic in this area. Someone is very interested in what we might find down here." Dr. Vasquez checks her watch. "We need to make a decision about how much more exploration we can do safely. We've been down here for 40 minutes, and I'm concerned about weather conditions on the surface." Santos looks at the arrow carved into the ice wall, pointing deeper into the cave system. Every instinct tells her that following that arrow might lead to answers she's been seeking for 11 years. But her training also tells her that splitting up or venturing further into unmapped territory could be deadly. "Kim or whoever you are, do you have backup coming?" "There's a team positioned about 5 miles from here, but they can't reach us quickly in these conditions." If we get into trouble down here, we're on our own for at least 2 hours. Santos makes her decision. We follow the arrow. But we stay together, we maintain constant communication, and at the first sign of danger, we retreat. As they gather their gear and prepare to venture deeper into the cave system, Santos notices something that makes her pause. Near the base of the helmet display, partially hidden by shadow, there's another piece of fabric. But this one is different, newer, cleaner. She kneels and carefully extracts it from the ice. It's a piece of torn cloth, dark blue, with a distinctive pattern. The same pattern as the shirt Detective Hutchins was wearing when they met at the trailhead. Santos looks up toward the cave entrance again, then at Kim. How well do you know the man who stayed on the surface? I met him for the first time this morning, same as you. Why? Santos holds up the piece of fabric. Because unless I'm mistaken, Hutchins has been down here before, recently. The implications hang in the frigid air like their visible breath. If Hutchins has already been in the cave, he knows more about the missing firefighters than he's admitted. And if he's connected to the criminal network Kim described, then leaving him alone on the surface may have been a fatal mistake. As if summoned by their conversation, Hutchins's voice suddenly echoes down from the cave entrance, distorted by distance and rock walls. Everything okay down there? I'm seeing some weather moving in. Might need to consider extraction soon. Santos and Kim exchange glances. The morning sky had been clear when they arrived, with no indication of incoming weather. Kim pulls out a small radio device. Base, this is Agent Kim. We may have a situation at the cave site. Requesting immediate backup. Static fills the channel, followed by a brief transmission that makes Santos's blood freeze. Agent Kim, this is Base. We show no Agent Kim deployed to your coordinates. Identify yourself. Kim stares at the radio, her face pale in the headlamp. Light, that's impossible. I transmitted my location and mission parameters yesterday. Santos steps closer to Kim, her hand moving instinctively toward the knife on her belt. If you're not really a federal agent, then who are you? Before Kim can answer, a new sound echoes through the cave system, the distinct noise of rope being pulled up rapidly from the entrance shaft. They're trapped. The sound of rope scraping against rock echoes through the cave chamber with sickening finality. Santos shines her headlamp upward, but the entrance is too far above to see clearly. What she can see is the absence of the climbing rope that had been their lifeline to the surface. Hutchins! Santos shouts, her voice bouncing off the ice-covered walls. Lower the rope! Silence. Kim fumbles with her radio again, cycling through channels. Base, this is Agent Kim requesting immediate assistance at coordinates. Stop. Santos interrupts, grabbing Kim's wrist. If you're really a federal agent, why doesn't your base recognize you? And if you're not, then who's listening to those transmissions? Dr. Vasquez backs against the cave wall, her eyes wide with growing panic. This can't be happening. I have safety protocols. The university knows our location. When we don't report back, when do you have to check in? Santos asks. Not until tomorrow morning. Santos closes her eyes, calculating. 18 hours minimum before anyone starts looking for them. In 32-degree temperatures, without proper cold weather gear, they might have 12 hours before. Hypothermia becomes life-threatening. Kim holsters her radio and looks directly at Santos. Captain, I need to tell you the truth. My real name is Sarah Kim, and I am a federal investigator, but not with the Park Service. I work for a joint task force investigating organized crime operations in remote areas. We've been tracking a group that uses wilderness locations for human trafficking. And you think my firefighters stumbled into one of their operations? I think your firefighters discovered something they weren't supposed to see. And I think someone has been covering it up for 11 years. Dr. Vasquez points toward the deeper passages of the cave. If we can't get out the way we came in, there Might be other exits. These lava tube systems sometimes connect to surface openings miles away. Santos examines the carved arrow in the ice wall again. Morrison left us directions. If he and his crew made it deeper into the cave system, they might have found another way out. As they gather their equipment and prepare to follow the arrows. Direction, Santos notices something that makes her heart skip. Near the base of the carved message, almost hidden in shadow, there's a small object wedged into a crack in the ice. She kneels and carefully extracts it with her knife tip. It's a brass button, tarnished but still clearly identifiable as the type used on firefighter uniforms. More importantly, it bears the insignia of Station 19. Elena, how long would it take for brass to tarnish like this in these conditions? Dr. Vasquez examines the button closely. In this environment, the cold and humidity would slow oxidation significantly. To achieve this level of tarnish, years. Definitely years. Santos. Pockets. The button, adding it to her growing collection of evidence that her crew had indeed made it to this cave. But evidence of their presence doesn't explain how they'd gotten here from a location 12 miles away, or why their truck had been found with all their personal gear still inside. Kim takes point as they move deeper into the cave system, following a passage that slopes gradually downward. The walls here are different, less ice, more bare rock, with strange formations that look almost artificial. These walls, Dr. Vasquez observes, running her hand along the smooth stone surface. This doesn't look like natural lava tube formation. Santos examines the walls more closely. The stone has been cut and shaped, though not recently. This looks like mining activity, old mining. They continue for another 100 yards before the passage opens into a second chamber, smaller than the first, but with several branching tunnels, leading in different directions. Here, the evidence of human modification is unmistakable. Wooden support beams, rotted but still standing, line portions of the walls. Rusted metal equipment lies scattered across the floor. Gold mining, probably. Kim says, examining a corroded pickaxe. This region had significant mining activity in the late 1800s. But it's Dr. Vasquez who makes the discovery that changes everything. Near the center of the chamber, she calls out in a voice tight with tension. "Captain Santos, Agent Kim, you need to see this immediately." They hurry over to where she stands beside what appears to be a natural depression in the cave floor. But as their headlamps illuminate the area, it becomes clear that the depression isn't natural at all. It's a grave. The outline is unmistakable roughly. 6 feet long, 3 feet wide, filled with loose rock and debris. At the head of the grave, someone has erected a crude marker made from pieces of mining equipment welded together. Carved into a metal plate attached to the marker are 3 names: Jake Morrison, Tommy Chun, Sarah Walsh. Below the names, a date, August 15, 2013. Santos stares at the grave marker, feeling the world tilt around her. After 11 years of uncertainty, of hoping against hope that her crew might somehow still be alive, she's faced with what appears to be definitive proof of their deaths. But something doesn't feel right. "The dates are wrong," she says suddenly. Kim and Dr. Vasquez look at her in confusion. August 15th was the day they disappeared. But look at this marker. It's professional work. Someone welded this metal, carved these letters with precision tools. That kind of fabrication takes time, planning. If they died on August 15th, who made this marker? Dr. Vasquez kneels beside the grave, examining the construction more closely. Maria's right. This metalwork is recent. Look at the welding joints. They show minimal oxidation. This marker was created within the last few years, not 11 years ago. Kim pulls out a small device that Santos doesn't recognize, some kind of scanner or detector. She passes it over the grave area, studying the readout with growing excitement. "This isn't reading right for a burial site," she announces. "The ground density is wrong. Either this grave is empty, Or ... Or what? Or it was meant to be found. Someone wanted people to believe your firefighters are buried here. Santos feels a surge of hope mixed with growing anger. Someone has been manipulating this situation from the beginning, creating false evidence, staging discoveries. But why? Their speculation is interrupted by a new sound, footsteps echoing from one of the side passages. Multiple sets of footsteps, moving with purpose. Kim draws a pistol from beneath her jacket, a move that confirms her law enforcement background. "Kill your lights," she whispers. "Move to defensive positions." They extinguish their headlamps, plunging the chamber into absolute darkness. Santos can hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears as the footsteps grow closer. Whoever is approaching isn't trying to be stealthy, they're moving openly, confidently, as if they know exactly where to find their targets. A beam of light cuts through the darkness, followed by a familiar voice that makes Santos's blood run cold. "Captain Santos, Agent Kim, Dr. Vasquez. I know you're in there. We need to talk." It's Detective Hutchins, but his voice carries a different tone, now authoritative, threatening. And he's not alone. Santos can see at least 3 other light sources moving through the darkness. "You've seen enough down here," Hutchins continues. "It's time to leave. All of you." Kim's voice cuts through the darkness, steady and professional. "Hutchins, you're interfering with a federal investigation. Identify your companions and state your authority." Hutchins laughs, a sound that echoes eerily off the cave walls. "Federal investigation? Agent Kim, your credentials are fake. Your backup isn't coming. And the only authority that matters down here is mine." The lights move closer, and Santos can see that Hutchins and his companions are armed. Professional weapons, tactical gear. This isn't a rescue, it's a cleanup operation. Santos grabs Dr. Vasquez's arm and whispers, "Elena, how many exits from this chamber?" 4 passages, but I don't know where they lead." "It doesn't matter. On my signal, we run for the passage furthest from their position." But before Santos can give the signal, Kim makes a decision that changes everything. She steps into the light, weapon raised, and shouts, "Federal agents, drop your weapons." The cave erupts in gunfire. Muzzle flashes strobe through the darkness like deadly lightning, the gunshots deafeningly loud in the confined space. Santos tackles Dr. Vasquez behind a pile of mining debris as bullets spark off the stone walls around them. Kim rolls to cover. Behind the false grave marker, returning fire with practiced precision. Her shots force Hutchins and his team to seek their own cover, buying precious seconds. "The passage on our left," Santos shouts over the gunfire. "When I say go, run and don't look back." She pulls out her own sidearm, a service pistol she's carried for years, but hoped never to use outside a firing range. The weight feels both familiar and foreign in her hands as she peers around their cover. Hutchins's voice cuts through the chaos. "This doesn't have to end badly. We just need to talk." Funny way of starting a conversation. Kim shouts back, ejecting her spent magazine and slamming in a fresh one. Santos counts 4 muzzle flashes from the attacker's position. 4 armed men in a cave system with multiple exits. The odds aren't good, but they're not impossible. "Elena," Santos whispers, "when we move, stay low and keep moving no matter what you hear behind you. That passage slopes upward. Follow it until you find another chamber or an exit." Dr. Vasquez nods, her face pale but determined. "What about you and Agent Kim? We'll be right behind you." It's a lie, and Santos suspects Dr. Vasquez knows it. Someone needs to provide covering fire, and the glaciologist isn't trained for combat. But there's no time for lengthy explanations. Santos catches Kim's attention and signals toward the left passage. Kim nods and begins laying down suppressing fire, her shots carefully spaced to make Hutchins's team keep their heads down. "Go!" Santos shouts. Dr. Vasquez springs from cover and sprints toward the passage opening. Santos follows, turning to fire 3 quick shots at the muzzle flashes pursuing them. She hears Kim's boots pounding behind her as they plunge into the narrow tunnel. The passage is exactly as Dr. Vasquez described, sloping upward, with walls that close in uncomfortably. Their headlamps, switched back on, reveal a tunnel that appears to continue for at least 100 yards before branching. Behind them, Hutchins's voice echoes with frustration. Find them, and make sure Dr. Vasquez doesn't leave this cave system alive. The words chill Santos more than the cave's temperature. This isn't about capturing them for questioning, it's about eliminating witnesses. They run hard for 5 minutes, the tunnel floor treacherous with loose rock and patches of ice. Dr. Vasquez, despite her academic background, keeps pace admirably. Behind them, the sound of pursuit grows fainter but doesn't disappear entirely. At the first branch in the tunnel, Kim calls for a halt. She pulls out a device Santos doesn't recognize, a handheld unit with a small screen displaying what looks like a topographical map. GPS doesn't work down here, Kim explains, but this is a ground-penetrating radar unit. It can map cavity spaces up to about 50 meters ahead. Where did you get military-grade equipment? Santos asks. Kim hesitates, then answers honestly. Because I'm not just a federal investigator. I'm Special Forces, on loan to a joint task force investigating criminal operations in national wilderness areas. Dr. Vasquez leans against the tunnel wall, catching her breath. Are you going to tell us who you really work for? Army Intelligence, detached to a classified program tracking organized crime use of public lands. Captain Santos, you're missing. Firefighters stumbled into an operation that's been running for over a decade. Santos feels pieces of a larger puzzle clicking into place. The cave system. They're using it to move people or contraband. Both. We've been tracking unusual activity patterns, missing persons cases that don't fit normal statistical models, equipment and supplies being purchased in quantities that don't match reported wilderness activities. This cave system connects to at least 12 different surface access points across 40 miles of terrain. Kim's radar unit beeps softly and she studies the display. There's a large chamber about 30 meters ahead, with what looks like multiple exit routes. But I'm also detecting movement behind us. They're following. As they move toward the chamber Kim detected, Dr. Vasquez makes an observation that stops them cold. The airflow in this tunnel, it's not natural convection. There's mechanical ventilation. Santos immediately understands the implication. Someone has modified this cave system extensively. This isn't just a smuggling route, it's a permanent installation. They emerge from the tunnel into a chamber that takes their breath away. Unlike the natural ice caves they've been exploring, this space has been deliberately excavated and reinforced. Electric cables run along the walls, connecting to battery-powered LED light strips. The floor has been leveled and covered with wooden planking. And stacked along the walls are dozens of supply crates, marked with symbols Santos doesn't recognize. Kim approaches one of the crates and forces it open with her knife. Inside, packed in foam, are small electronic devices, radios, GPS units, cell phone signal boosters. Communication equipment, she announces, military grade. Dr. Vasquez opens another crate and recoils. Captain Santos, you need to see this. Santos hurries over and looks into the crate. Inside are personal documents, driver's licenses, passports, social security cards, all bearing the faces of different people, but Santos recognizes the pattern immediately. These are all missing persons from wilderness areas, she realizes. People who disappeared hiking, camping, rock climbing. Kim's radar unit suddenly beeps urgently. Movement in the tunnel behind us. Multiple contacts, approximately 2 minutes out. But Santos is staring at something in the document crate that makes her heart stop. Near the bottom of the pile, she sees a familiar face on a California driver's license. It's Sarah Walsh, her missing firefighter. But the license isn't 11 years old. According to the issue date, it was created 3 years ago. Santos grabs the license, her hands shaking. Kim, if Sarah Walsh died in 2013, how does she have a driver's license from 2021? Before Kim can answer, they hear Hutchins's voice echoing. From the tunnel they just exited. I know you found the supply chamber. There's nowhere left to run. Santos looks around the chamber, noting the multiple exit tunnels. But now she's beginning to understand the true scope of what they've discovered. This isn't just a smuggling operation. It's identity theft and human trafficking network that's been operating for years. And somehow, her missing firefighters are connected to it. Dr. Vasquez points to one of the exit tunnels. That passage shows airflow consistent with the surface opening. It might be our way out. But as they prepare to leave, Santos notices something. Else in the supply chamber, a bulletin board mounted on one wall, covered with photographs and documents. She approaches it and sees photos of dozens of people, including several she recognizes from missing persons reports. At the center of the board is a map of the regional cave system, marked with entry and exit points, supply caches, and what appear to be meeting locations. And pinned to the corner of the map is a photograph that makes Santos's blood freeze. It shows Jake Morrison, Tommy Chun, and Sarah Walsh, but they're not wearing firefighter uniforms. They're wearing civilian clothes, and they're standing in what appears to be this very chamber. The photograph is dated 6 months ago. Santos rips the photo from the board, staring at the faces of her missing crew members. If this picture is recent, then everything she's believed about their disappearance is wrong. They didn't die in the wildfire. They didn't die in the cave. They've been alive this entire time. And they're part of whatever criminal operation has been running out of this cave system. Kim sees the photograph and her expression hardens. Captain, we need to leave, now. But Santos is studying the other documents on the bulletin board, and she's beginning to see a pattern that terrifies her. Multiple missing persons cases, all involving people with specific skills: emergency responders, military veterans, people with training that would be valuable to a criminal organization. They're not victims, Santos whispers. They're recruiting people, taking skilled individuals and forcing them to work for the organization. Or, Kim says grimly, some of them joined voluntarily. The sound of approaching footsteps grows louder, and Santos knows they're out of time. But as they head for the exit tunnel, she takes one more look at the photograph of her missing crew. In the background of the image, barely visible, is another figure. Someone partially obscured by shadow, but Santos can make out enough details to recognize the face. It's Captain Maria Santos. Her own face, in a photograph taken 6 months ago, in a place she's never been before today. Santos stares at the photograph, her mind reeling. The image shows her clearly: same face, same build, same scar above her left eyebrow from a training accident 15 years ago. But the woman in the photograph is wearing clothes Santos has never owned, standing in a place she's never been. That's impossible, she whispers. Kim snatches the photograph from Santos's hand, studying it closely. Photo manipulation. It has to be. Look at the lighting, the shadows, Dr. Vasquez says, examining the image over Kim's shoulder. If this is digitally altered, it's incredibly sophisticated work. The sound of footsteps in the tunnel grows closer, forcing them to postpone their analysis. Santos grabs several more documents from the bulletin board, anything that might contain information about her missing crew, and stuffs them into her jacket pockets. They enter the exit tunnel Kim identified, moving as quickly as the terrain allows. This passage is different from the others, wider, with evidence of regular use. The walls show wear patterns from equipment being transported, and the floor has been cleared of loose rock. After 10 minutes of steady climbing, they see something that gives them hope: natural light filtering down from ahead. Not the harsh beam of electric lights, but the soft gray glow of daylight. Surface access, Dr. Vasquez breathes. But as they approach the light source, Kim's radar unit detects something troubling. There are people up there. At least 3. Individuals positioned around what appears to be the exit. Santos peers around a bend in the tunnel and sees the opening, a natural crack in the rock face, partially concealed by vegetation. But Kim is right. She can see movement in the shadows. Beyond the opening. They've got the exit covered, Santos realizes. Hutchins must have radioed ahead. Kim checks her weapon and ammunition. How many rounds do you have left, Captain? Santos counts her remaining bullets. 12. I've got 1 full magazine plus 4 rounds in the chamber. Against potentially 7 or 8 hostiles. That's not encouraging odds. Dr. Vasquez looks between them. There has to be another way out. These lava tube systems often have multiple surface connections. Santos pulls out the documents she grabbed from the bulletin board, spreading them on the tunnel floor. Among them is a detailed map of the cave system, more comprehensive than anything Dr. Vasquez had shown them earlier. This map shows at least 6 different surface exits, Santos says, studying the markings. But look at this. She points to a series of red X marks scattered across the map. These might indicate exits that have been sealed or are under surveillance. Kim examines the map more closely, or they could mark locations where people have been eliminated. The thought hangs in the air like the cave's perpetual chill. How many people have discovered this operation over the years? How many have been silenced to protect it? Santos notices something else on the map, a location marked with a blue circle. Deep in the cave system, written next to it in small handwriting, are the initials J. Ma Jake Morrison. Elena, how far is this location from where we found the helmets? Dr. Vasquez estimates the distance using the map scale. Maybe a mile, following these passages. But Captain, that would take us deeper into the system, further from any exit. Morrison left us a trail for a reason. If he's alive, if he's trying to communicate, we need to find out what he's trying to tell us. Kim shakes her head. Captain, with respect, we have immediate threats pursuing us. This isn't the time for... She's interrupted by the sound of voices from the tunnel. Behind them, Hutchins and his team have reached the supply chamber and discovered their exit route. Decision time, Santos says. We can try to fight our way out through a covered exit, or we follow Morrison's trail and hope it leads to answers. Dr. Vasquez surprises them both by speaking up. I vote we follow the trail. As a scientist, I've learned that when evidence points in a specific direction, ignoring it usually leads to failure. Kim holsters her weapon. Fine, but if we get trapped deeper in this system with no way out, I'm holding you both responsible. They backtrack to a junction they passed earlier, then take a passage that slopes more steeply downward. The map indicates this route will eventually connect to the area marked with Morrison's initials, but it's a complex path with multiple branches. As they descend, the character of the cave system changes again. The walls here show different geological formations, not the smooth basalt of lava tubes, but rougher stone with mineral deposits that sparkle in their headlamps. We're entering a different formation, Dr. Vasquez observes. This looks like limestone caverns, not volcanic caves. Different geological age? Probably. These formations could be millions of years older than the lava tubes. After 20 minutes of careful navigation, they emerge into a cavern that takes their breath. Away, the space is enormous with a ceiling that disappears beyond their light beams. But what makes it remarkable isn't its size, it's what's inside it. The cavern has been converted into a living space. Not temporary shelters, but permanent structures built from salvaged materials and cave formations. Electric lights powered by what appears to be a small generator provide steady illumination. There's even running water, piped in from an underground stream. And sitting at a table in the center of the space, as if he's been waiting for them, is Jake Morrison. Santos's legs nearly give out beneath her. After 11 years of wondering, of hoping, of grieving, She's face to face with her missing crew leader. He looks older, thinner, with gray threading through his hair and lines around his eyes that weren't there before. But it's unmistakably him. "Hello, Maria," Morrison says, his voice carrying a weariness that cuts straight to her heart. "I was wondering when you'd find your way down here. Santos can barely speak. Jake ... We thought you were dead. All of you. What happened? Where? Are Tommy and Sarah?" Morrison gestures to chairs around the table. "Sit down. All of you. There's a lot to explain, and not much time to do it." As they approach the table, Santos sees something that makes her pause. Morrison is wearing civilian clothes, but on the table in front of him is a firefighter's helmet. Not one of the helmets they found on the ice shelf. This one shows heavy use, with scorch marks and dents from years of service. "Is that your helmet?" she asks. Morrison picks up the helmet, running his fingers over its scarred surface. It is. The one on the ice shelf upstairs is a replica. Part of the deception we've been maintaining. Kim steps forward, her hand resting on her weapon. "Mr. Morrison, I'm a federal agent investigating criminal activity in this area. Are you operating under duress, or are you here voluntarily?" Morrison looks at Kim with eyes that have seen too much. "Agent Kim, and yes, I know who you really are. The answer to your question is complicated. I'm here voluntarily now. But that wasn't always the case." Santos sits across from Morrison, studying his face. "Jake, what happened on August 15th? How did you get from the fire line to this cave?" "We were doing exactly what we reported, establishing a fire break. But we weren't alone out there. There were other people in the forest, people who weren't supposed to be there. When we discovered what they were doing, everything changed." Dr. Vasquez leans forward. "What were they doing?" Morrison's expression hardens. "Moving people. Dozens of them, through the forest in groups. People who looked scared, who didn't speak English, who were being herded like cattle." Santos feels pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. Human trafficking. That was our first thought too. We tried to radio for help, but they jammed our communications. Then they surrounded U.S., made it clear that we had two choices: join them or disappear permanently. Kim checks her weapon again. "So you joined them?" "We pretended to join them," Morrison corrects. "Long enough to learn about their operation, to gather evidence. But Maria, what we discovered, it's bigger than human trafficking, much bigger." Before Morrison can continue, an alarm begins blaring throughout the cavern, a harsh electronic sound that echoes off the stone walls. Morrison jumps to his feet. "They found us. The perimeter sensors have been triggered." Santos looks around the cavern, noting the multiple exit tunnels. "Jake, how many ways out of here?" "3 that lead to the surface, but they'll have all of them covered within minutes." Kim moves toward one of the exit tunnels, then stops. "Morrison, where are the other 2 firefighters? Where are Chun and Walsh?" Morrison's expression becomes pained. "Tommy's dead. Killed 2 years ago when he tried to leave the operation. But Sarah ... He pauses, looking directly at Santos with an expression of profound regret. "Sarah's the one who's been running the operation for the past 3 years. She's the reason those helmets were placed where you'd find them. She's been planning this reunion for a long time." The alarm continues to blare as Santos processes this revelation. Her missing firefighter, the woman she'd mourned for 11 years, is not only alive but has become the leader of a criminal organization. And if Morrison is right, Sarah Walsh has orchestrated everything, including bringing Santos to this cave. The cavern lights suddenly cut out, plunging them into darkness broken only by their headlamps. In the distance, Santos can hear the sound of vehicles approaching through the forest above multiple engines. Coordinated movement. "This way," Morrison says, grabbing a pre-packed bag from beside his chair. "There's an exit they don't know about." As they follow Morrison toward a concealed passage behind what appears to be a natural rock formation, Santos grabs his arm. Jake, I need to know, is Sarah really responsible for all this? Morrison's face is grim in the headlamp light. Maria, the woman you knew as Sarah Walsh, died the day we were taken. What she became, what this place turned her into, she's not the same person. They enter a narrow passage that slopes steeply upward. Unlike the other tunnels, this one shows no signs of regular use. The floor is covered with loose rock, and they have to climb carefully to avoid triggering a slide. This connects to an old mining shaft about half a mile from where you parked. Morrison explains. It's concealed by an equipment shed that looks abandoned. Kim brings up the rear, constantly checking behind them for pursuit. Morrison, what exactly is the scope of this operation? How many people are involved? Active participants? Maybe 30 to 40 people. But the network extends much further. Officials who look the other way, suppliers who don't ask questions, transportation companies that move cargo without proper documentation. Dr. Vasquez struggles with the steep climb. How long has it been operating? The trafficking started about 15 years ago, but it evolved. What began as moving undocumented immigrants became something more sophisticated: identity theft, document forgery, even recruitment of people with specific skills. Santos thinks about the supply chamber they discovered. People like firefighters, police officers, military personnel. Exactly. People with training that's valuable to criminal organizations. Some join voluntarily after being compromised or blackmailed. Others ... Morrison's voice trails off. Others are coerced. Kim finishes. They reach a junction where the passage splits in 3 directions. Morrison checks a handheld GPS unit and selects the middle passage. This way, we're about 10 minutes from the surface. As they climb, Santos presses Morrison for more details. Jake, why didn't you try to escape? In 11 years, there must have been opportunities. Morrison stops climbing and turns to face her. Maria, after the first year, I didn't want to escape. They gave me a purpose, resources, the ability to help people that the system had failed. It wasn't until I realized what Sarah was becoming that I understood how far we'd fallen. What do you mean? The original operation was about survival, helping people escape bad situations, providing new identities for abuse victims, reuniting families separated by immigration policies. But Sarah ... she turned it into something predatory. They resume climbing, and Morrison continues his explanation. She started targeting people specifically, identifying individuals with skills or resources the organization needed. Emergency responders were particularly valuable because of their training and their access to official systems. Santos feels a chill that has nothing to do with the cave temperature. The photograph I found, the one showing me in this cave system. She's been planning to recruit me for 3 years, ever since she took over leadership of the operation. Kim checks her weapon again. Morrison, if Walsh is really running this organization, why are you helping us escape? What's your angle? Morrison stops climbing and looks directly at Kim. Because I finally realized that some people can't be saved from what they've become. And because I made a promise to Maria 11 years ago that I'd bring her crew home safely. Tommy Chun is dead. Sarah Walsh has become a criminal. That leaves just you. That leaves me with a debt to pay. They reach the surface exit, a concealed opening in what appears to be the floor of a dilapidated mining equipment shed. Morrison carefully opens a trapdoor camouflaged with dirt and debris, revealing the forest beyond. The afternoon sun is blinding after hours in the cave, and Santos has to shield her eyes as they emerge. But as her vision adjusts, she sees that they're not alone. Standing in a semicircle around the shed are 6 armed figures in tactical gear. And at their center, wearing civilian clothes but carrying a military-style rifle, is a woman Santos recognizes immediately despite the changes 11 years have wrought. Sarah Walsh is taller than Santos remembered, her blonde hair now cut short and streaked with premature gray. Her face is harder, with lines around her eyes that speak of years spent making difficult decisions. But her stance, her bearing, the way she holds her weapon, all unmistakably professional. "Hello, Captain," Walsh says, her voice carrying the same authority it had 11 years ago, but with an edge that wasn't there before. "I've been looking forward to this reunion." Santos steps protectively in front of Dr. Vasquez, her hand moving toward her weapon. "Sarah, Jake told me you were alive, but seeing you ... Hurts?" Walsh asks with a bitter smile. "Good. It should. Hurt. Do you know what it's like to be abandoned by the people who promised to have your back? We searched for you. For months, we never stopped looking." Walsh's expression hardens. "You looked in all the wrong places. You looked for victims, for bodies, for evidence of tragedy. You never looked for survivors who might have chosen a different path." Kim steps forward, her weapon drawn but not yet aimed. "Ms. Walsh, I'm a federal agent. You're under arrest for human trafficking, kidnapping, and conspiracy to commit." Walsh cuts her off with a laugh that holds no humor. "Agent Kim, or should I say Sergeant Kim of the 75th Ranger Regiment. Your real name is Sarah Kim Chun. You've been a WOL from the Army for 8 months, and you're wanted for questioning in the deaths of 3 fellow soldiers in Afghanistan." Kim's face goes pale, but her weapon remains steady. "That's classified information." "How do you—" "Because information is currency in my business. And because I've been tracking your real identity since you sent your first inquiry about this case." Santos looks between Kim and Walsh, realizing that nothing she's believed about this situation is true. "Sarah, what do you want from us?" Walsh signals to her team, who adjust their positions to block all escape routes from the clearing. "I want to offer you the same choice Jake faced 11 years ago. Join us willingly and help us build something better than the broken system you've been serving, or you kill us," Santos finishes. "Or I let the system kill you," Walsh corrects. "Maria, did you know there's a federal warrant for your arrest? Something about misappropriation of emergency funds and falsifying incident reports. Apparently, you've been stealing from the department for years." Santos stares at Walsh in shock. "That's impossible. I've never—" "Of course you haven't, but the evidence says otherwise. Bank records, forged signatures, testimonies from fellow firefighters who swear they saw you taking equipment and supplies. It's all very convincing." Morrison steps closer to Santos. "This is what she does now, Maria. She creates leverage, manufactures evidence, forces people to choose between joining her organization or facing destruction." Walsh shrugs. "I prefer to think of it as offering people better options than the ones they had." Dr. Vasquez, who has been silent throughout this exchange, suddenly speaks up. "Ms. Walsh, what happened to you down in those caves? What changed you from a firefighter into this?" Walsh's expression softens for just a moment, revealing a glimpse of the woman she used to be. "What changed me was realizing that the people we swore to serve and protect don't give a damn about us when we need help. When Jake, Tommy, and I were captured, do you know how long the official search lasted? 6 months, Santos says quietly. 6 months. Then we were declared dead and forgotten. While we were fighting for our lives, learning to survive in conditions you can't imagine, the department moved on. Hired replacements, acted like we never existed." Walsh's voice goes harder again. "So I decided to build something that wouldn't abandon its people. An organization that takes care of its own, that provides real security and real purpose." Santos studies Walsh's face, seeing traces of the dedicated firefighter she once knew beneath the hardened criminal leader. "Sarah, it's not too late. We can find another way to—" "There is no other way," Walsh snaps. "The system is broken. Maria, corrupt from top to bottom. The only choice is whether you're going to be a victim of that system or take control of your own destiny." She raises her rifle, not quite pointing it at Santos, but making her intentions clear. "So what's it going to be, Captain? Are you going to join your crew, or are you going to force me to complete the mission without you?" Santos looks around the clearing, calculating odds and options. 6 armed opponents in tactical positions. Her own team consists of herself, a geologist with no combat training, a possibly rogue federal agent, and Morrison, whose loyalties remain unclear. But as she considers their situation, Santos notices something Walsh apparently hasn't. Kim is positioning herself for a specific type of combat maneuver, and Morrison is slowly reaching for something concealed behind his back. The reunion is about to become a firefight. Morrison's hand moves to a device clipped to his belt, not a weapon, but what appears to be a radio detonator. His eyes meet Santos's for a fraction of a second, and she sees a message there. "Trust me." "Sarah," Morrison says, his voice carrying the calm authority Santos remembers from their firefighting days. "Before anyone makes irreversible decisions, there's something you need to know." Walsh keeps her rifle trained on Santos but glances toward Morrison. "Jake, don't make this more complicated than it needs to be. The federal task force isn't just Agent Kim. There are teams positioned at every known exit from the cave system. Satellite surveillance has been tracking movement in this area for the past 6 hours. If shooting starts here, none of us are walking away." Kim's eyes narrow as she studies Morrison. "How do you know about federal surveillance assets?" Morrison's thumb hovers over the detonator button. "Because I've been feeding information to the task force for the past 18 months. Every operation, every transport, every new recruitment, I've been documenting all of it." The revelation hits Walsh like a physical blow. Her weapon wavers slightly as she processes the betrayal. "You've been working against us?" "I've been working to end this," Morrison corrects. "To find a way to stop what you've become without destroying the people who still have a chance at redemption." Santos sees her opportunity and takes a careful step toward Walsh. "Sarah, listen to him. This can end without more violence. We can find a way to—" "No!" Walsh's voice cracks with fury and pain. "Jake, how could you? After everything we've been through, everything we built together?" Morrison's expression is filled with genuine sorrow. "Because you stopped being Sarah Walsh and became something else. Because Tommy died trying to leave and you let it happen to maintain discipline. Because you've forgotten that we became firefighters to save people, not to control them." Walsh's team begins to shift nervously, their weapons moving between targets as they sense the situation deteriorating. Santos recognizes the signs trained. Operatives waiting for clear orders, growing uncertain as their leadership becomes emotional. Dr. Vasquez, showing remarkable courage for a civilian, steps forward. "Ms. Walsh, as someone who studies natural systems, I can tell you that organizations, like ecosystems, can adapt and change. What you've built here doesn't have to continue on its current path." Walsh laughs bitterly. "Dr. Vasquez, you study ice and rock. I deal with human nature. And human nature doesn't change, it just reveals itself under pressure." Kim makes her move. In one fluid motion, she dives left while drawing her sidearm, rolling behind the nearest cover and opening fire on Walsh's team. Her first shot takes down the operative closest to Santos, creating a gap in their defensive line. Morrison triggers his detonator. The explosion comes not from above ground, but from deep in the cave system below them. The earth shakes violently, and Santos realizes Morrison has collapsed the main passages, sealing off the underground operation. "You bastard!" Walsh screams, firing at Morrison. But her shot goes wide as another tremor from the underground explosion throws off her aim. Santos tackles Dr. Vasquez to the ground as bullets begin flying in earnest. The clearing erupts in chaos, Walsh's team seeking cover while trying to maintain their positions. Kim providing suppressing fire from behind a fallen log. Morrison diving for his own cover behind the equipment shed. Elena, stay down and don't move. Santos shouts, drawing her own weapon. But as she prepares to return fire, Santos notices something that changes her entire perception of the situation. One of Walsh's operatives isn't shooting, he's speaking. Rapidly into a radio, coordinating with someone else. As if on cue, the sound of helicopters fills the air. 3 aircraft appear over the tree line, not criminal aircraft, but clearly military or law enforcement. Kim was right about the federal surveillance. Sarah. Santos calls out during a brief lull in the gunfire. It's over. Federal agents are incoming. Surrender now and we can work something out. Walsh emerges from cover, her weapon trained on Santos. Her face is streaked with dirt and tears, but her eyes burn with desperate determination. Maria, you never understood. There is no working something out. The system doesn't forgive people like us. It uses us up and throws us away. That's not true. It is true, Walsh's voice breaks. Do you know what they did to us in those first months? How they broke us down, rebuilt us, made us into tools for their operation. Tommy tried to resist, tried to hold on to who he was. They killed him slowly, Maria, over weeks, made Jake and me watch. Santos feels her heart breaking for the woman Walsh used to be. Sarah, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry we couldn't find you in time. But this what you've become, this isn't the answer. Walsh's rifle wavers as emotion overwhelms her tactical discipline. Maybe not, but it's the only answer I have left. The helicopters are closer now, their rotors creating a windstorm that bends the trees around the clearing. Santos can see tactical teams preparing to fast rope down. Sarah, please, Santos begs. Drop your weapon, let me help you. For a moment, Walsh's hard expression cracks, revealing the frightened young firefighter she once was. Maria, there's something you need to know about why I brought you here. What? The organization. It's not just about criminal operations anymore. We've been infiltrating emergency services across 3 states. Police departments, fire departments, federal agencies, people in positions of authority who can provide cover, alter investigations, make inconvenient problems disappear. Santos feels cold dread spreading through her chest. How many people? Dozens, maybe hundreds. And they're all going to be exposed when this operation falls apart. Good people who got in too deep, who made compromises to survive or protect their families. Kim, still maintaining her cover position, calls out, Walsh, if you have information about corruption in federal agencies, that can be part of a cooperation agreement. Walsh laughs bitterly. Agent Kim, you still don't understand. I'm not just offering information about the corruption. I'm offering to prevent a massacre. She reaches into her jacket and pulls out another detonator, different from the one Morrison used. There are 12 backup facilities connected to this operation. Each one contains evidence that could destroy the lives of hundreds of people, many of them innocent victims who were coerced into cooperation. Morrison emerges from cover, his hands raised. Sarah, don't do this. Those people deserve a chance to come forward voluntarily, do they? Walsh asks. The way we had a chance to come home voluntarily 11 years ago. The helicopters are directly overhead now, and Santos can see federal agents preparing to deploy. In seconds, the clearing will be flooded with tactical teams. Walsh looks directly at Santos, her expression softening one final time. Maria, I brought you here because you're one of the few people I've ever trusted completely. If anyone can help the people who got caught up in this mess find a way forward, it's you. She tosses the second detonator to Santos, who catches it reflexively. The choice is yours, Captain. Destroy the evidence and protect the people who were trying to survive a broken system, or let the feds sort through the wreckage and destroy. Innocent lives along with the guilty ones. Santos stares at the detonator in her hands, Understanding the impossible choice Walsh has forced upon her. Press the button, and dozens of backup facilities containing evidence of corruption will be destroyed, protecting people who may have been coerced into criminal activity, but also allowing genuine criminals to escape justice. Don't press it, and hundreds of people, many of them victims themselves, will have their lives destroyed when their cooperation with the criminal network is exposed. The first federal agents begin fast roping from the helicopters, their boots hitting the ground with tactical precision. Walsh raises her rifle toward the approaching agents, and Santos realizes her former firefighter is preparing to die in a final act of defiance. Sarah, no. Walsh turns back to Santos one last time. Take care of our people, Maria, the ones who still deserve saving. She opens fire on the federal agents. Santos has 3 seconds to make a decision that will affect hundreds of lives. The detonator weighs heavy in her hands as gunfire erupts around her. Santos drops to the ground as federal agents return fire, their tactical precision cutting through the chaos like a blade. Walsh's rifle cracks twice more before a sniper's bullet from one of the helicopters ends her defiance forever. The silence that follows is deafening. Santos crawls to where Walsh has fallen, the detonator still clutched in her hand. Her former firefighter lies motionless, eyes staring at the forest canopy she'll never see again. Despite everything Walsh had become, Santos feels tears streaming down her face. Captain Santos. A federal agent approaches with his weapon raised but not aimed. Drop any weapons and identify yourself. Santos places her pistol on the ground and raises her hands, the detonator hidden in her palm. Captain Maria Santos, California Department of Forestry. I'm the one who reported the discovery in the cave system. Kim emerges from cover, her hands also raised. Agent Sarah Kim, Army Intelligence, detached to Joint Task Force Operations. I need to speak with your commanding officer immediately. The Federal Operation Commander, a stern woman in her 50s wearing FBI tactical gear, approaches cautiously. I'm Special Agent Lisa Chung, FBI. Miss Kim, you're supposed to be a WOL from the Army. It's complicated, Kim replies. I've been operating under deep cover orders that weren't shared with standard law enforcement channels. As the agents secure the scene, Santos makes her decision. She slips the detonator into her jacket pocket without activating it. Whatever evidence exists in those backup facilities, whatever damage it might cause to innocent people caught up in Walsh's operation, the choice of what to do with it shouldn't be made in the heat of a firefight. Morrison approaches her, his hands zip-tied behind his back, but his expression relieved. Maria, are you all right? I don't know, Santos admits. Jake, how much of what Sarah said was true? About the corruption, the infiltration of emergency services? Morrison's face is grim, more than I wish, but not as extensive as she claimed. Sarah had a tendency to see conspiracies everywhere in her final years. Dr. Vasquez, shaken but unharmed, is being questioned by federal agents near the equipment shed. Santos can hear her explaining the glacial cave discovery that started everything, her academic precision a stark contrast to the violence that just occurred. Special Agent Chang approaches Santos directly. Captain, we need to debrief you extensively about what you discovered in the cave system. But first, did Ms. Walsh give you anything? Any devices, documents, or information we should know about? Santos feels the weight of the detonator in her pocket. She talked about backup facilities, evidence caches, but I don't have any specific information about locations. It's not technically a lie, but it's not the whole truth either. Santos knows she'll have to make a final decision about the detonator soon, but she needs time to think, to research, to understand the full implications of Walsh's final gambit. 3 hours later, Santos sits in a federal command trailer that's been set up at the original cave entrance. Through the window, she can see teams of agents and specialists documenting the underground facility, mapping the extent of the criminal operation. Agent Chang slides a thick folder across the table. Captain Santos, based on our preliminary investigation, the network Ms. Walsh was running is more extensive than we initially realized. We've identified at least 47 people who were directly involved, and possibly hundreds more who provided various forms of support or cooperation. Santos opens the folder and sees photographs, documents, organizational charts mapping out a criminal enterprise that touches law enforcement, emergency services, and federal agencies across multiple states. How many of these people were coerced? She asks. That's what we're trying to determine. Some appear to have joined voluntarily for financial gain. Others seem to have been blackmailed or threatened. And some. Chang pauses. Some appear to have been trying to work from within the organization to bring it down. She shows Santos a photograph that makes her heart skip. It's Morrison, but he's wearing civilian clothes and standing with Walsh and several other people. Santos doesn't recognize. Mr. Morrison has been cooperating with federal investigators for 18 months, Chang explains. His intelligence helped us map the organization's structure and identify key players. But he couldn't act directly without risking the lives of people who were trapped in the network. Santos thinks about the detonator hidden in her gear bag back at the hotel. Agent Chang, what happens to the people who were coerced into cooperation? The ones who didn't have a choice? That depends on the evidence we recover and their level of cooperation with our investigation. Some will face criminal charges. Others might be offered immunity in exchange for testimony. And some ... double quotes, Chang's expression softens slightly. Some might just be allowed to go home and try to rebuild their lives. Over the following weeks, Santos learns more about the scope of Walsh's operation. The human trafficking network had indeed been extensive, moving people across international borders and providing them with false identities. But it had also evolved into something more complex, a shadow organization that provided services to people failed by conventional systems. Some of the victims had been refugees seeking asylum who couldn't navigate official immigration processes. Others had been abuse survivors who needed to disappear from dangerous situations. Still others had been whistleblowers or witnesses who required protection that government agencies couldn't or wouldn't provide. Walsh had taken a criminal enterprise and transformed it into something that served legitimate needs through illegitimate means. The moral complexity of the situation makes Santos's head spin. 2 months after the raid, Santos drives back to the forest where everything began. The cave entrance has been sealed with concrete, marked only by a small plaque indicating it's a federal crime scene. The equipment shed where Walsh died has been demolished. She walks to the spot where her former firefighter made her final stand, where she forced Santos to choose between justice and mercy. A small bouquet of wildflowers marks the location placed there. Santos suspects by one of the many people whose lives Walsh had touched during her 11 years in the shadows. Santos pulls the detonator from her jacket pocket. She's carried it with her for 2 months, researching the backup facilities Walsh mentioned, trying to understand what evidence they contain and who would be hurt by its release. What she's learned has convinced her that Walsh was right about one thing: the world is more complicated than the simple categories of guilty and innocent that Santos once believed in. She looks at the detonator one final time, then makes her choice. Santos presses the button. In 12 locations across 3 states, carefully hidden caches of evidence are destroyed by small explosive charges Walsh installed as insurance policies. Documents that could have destroyed the lives of hundreds of people, some guilty, some innocent, most somewhere in between, are reduced to ash and scattered to the wind. Santos will never know if she made the right choice. But as she walks back to her car, she thinks about Morrison's words. Some people can't be saved from what they've become. Sarah Walsh had become something complex and tragic, a criminal who committed genuine crimes, but also a protector who saved lives that the system had abandoned. Her network had been built on illegal activities, but it had also provided services that no legitimate organization was willing or able to offer. 6 months later, Santos receives a letter with no return address. Inside is a photograph showing Morrison working with a disaster relief organization, helping rebuild communities devastated by wildfires. He looks healthier than he did in the cave, and there's something in his expression that suggests he's found a way to serve people without compromising his principles. The letter contains only a few words. "Thank you for bringing me home. The work continues, but now we do it in the light." Santos frames the photograph and hangs it in her office, next to the memorial photos of the firefighters lost over the years. To anyone who asks, she explains that Morrison was one of the 3 firefighters who disappeared 11 years ago, and that he was recently found alive. She doesn't mention the caves, the criminal network, or the impossible choices that sometimes define the difference between justice and mercy. Some stories, Santos has learned, are too complex for simple telling. On quiet evenings, she sometimes finds herself thinking about the people whose evidence was destroyed when she pressed that detonator button. Are they sleeping better now, knowing their secrets are safe? Or are they carrying new guilt, knowing they escaped consequences they might have deserved? Santos will never know. But she's learned to live with ambiguity, with choices that have no clear right answers, with the knowledge that sometimes protecting people means making decisions that can't be explained or justified to others. Outside her office window, the forest stretches toward mountains that hide countless secrets. Somewhere in those peaks and valleys, other people are making impossible choices. Building lives from the wreckage of systems that failed them, trying to find ways to help each other survive in a world that offers no guarantees. Santos returns to her paperwork, to the routine business of fighting fires and saving lives. But she carries with her the knowledge that heroism and criminality sometimes overlap, that good people can make terrible choices, and that the line between salvation and damnation is often thinner than ice on a cave wall. The 3 firefighters who vanished 11 years ago have finally come home. One in a coffin, one to a new life, and one to the understanding that some rescues require sacrificing the very principles that make rescue worthwhile. It's not the ending Santos had hoped for when she first saw those helmets on the ice shelf, but it's the ending they all earned, in the complex moral landscape where survival and service intersect with sacrifice and loss. Sometimes Santos has learned that's the best any of them can do.